Okay, hi everybody. This is what is this actually? Our webinar on the on the dissipation of glamour number 45. Number 45. I guess there's so much glamour in the air that our efforts are somehow very important. So, in our own little way, we'll continue to try to undermine the source of distortion that keeps us from seeing the truth and prevents humanity from seeing the truth as well, and the illusions that go with it, the misinterpretations, the wrong contextual kind of examination. We will look at all those things, but right now we're working on the great glamour of hatred. And actually, what I thought it would do after we have our little bit of alignment is to read the wonderful section from which this reference to the great glamour of hatred occurs, because it's so fundamental to what we're trying to do and to what the clarification of all illusion and glamour and Maya will lead to. It's a very beautiful section from the old commentary, and you might want to be aware of it. Maybe some of you are aware of it, and I think it'll be good to look at that, and then we'll go back to finish up our little short little compilation on the factor of hatred. So anyway, here we go. Let's just realize that wherever we may be, we're all brought together in consciousness at a point. A point really has no dimension. It is, and I say it's the only thing that's next to nothing, and yet is. We're all brought together, whatever our apparent location in extension is. You know how we look out in the world and we seem to perceive space, and through movement, we perceive time. And all of those things are just really categories of consciousness, as the philosopher Kant advised us. Really, we're all at the point. And for our practical purposes, we consider it a point of light, of love, and power. And we're offering ourselves up in the service of the ashram to assist in the eradication of the great mistakes that so many human beings make, and we cannot really exclude ourselves. So many human beings make when looking at the world and trying to determine what is truth. So in our own modest way, we follow Master DK's instructions, and we use his formulas, and we try to take what esoteric abilities we have, what occult power we have, and the use of the creative imagination, and we direct these things into an esoteric project to assist in the clarification of consciousness. In a way, we become, in terms of the seed groups, we become the trained observers, and let's call it the trained observers of reality, because we somehow manage to think through and penetrate all those veils that prevent us from seeing things as they really are. So we will cooperate with each other in this way, as we've come to do every week now, whenever it's possible. Olivia, Tuija, and I, well, I guess at Olivia's prompting, felt this would be a timely endeavor. And it turns out to be. Because when you look at some of the, well, politics and social interaction going on in the world, it's over the top, and it's all based upon distorted perception. Maybe we can help a little bit with that. So, we'll sound a single Om and then get into the business. I think I'll get a hold of a pitch pipe here so that phenomenon does not repeat itself. I gave you an A instead of a G. Well, A is pretty good. A is the fifth ray note. G is the second ray note, one of the second ray notes. It all depends where you begin. The whole new science of using color and sound in a way to clarify consciousness and in a way to assist with the healing work is on its way when the fourth ray comes into fuller expression in another 8 years. So we have to, get ourselves ready for that. All right, now I'm going to go straight to, let's see if I can, this is my old friend Annie Mueller, who was very helpful in the work, very, very helpful in the work for many years. She wrote kind of a project called Nothing Remains But Bliss. And the origin of that was here in this excerpt from Esoteric Psychology. Esoteric Psychology, page 34 and 35. And I hope I have this right. Here it is. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of substitute here this. Yeah, and it's a bit of it's a significant paragraph, and it's one that I would say all of us should be aware of. It refers to the Blessed Ones. Well, who is the Blessed One anyway? In a way, we as a spirit, as a monad, are the Blessed One, but in this particular case, it's also the extension of the monad in incarnation, whether that incarnation is through the egoic lotus or through the personality. It's all the monad, really, the consciousness and our sense of being. It's all the spirit that we are. And we're on our way to liberation. Of course, we can't have liberation if we're caught in the usual mistaken perceptions, which go by the name of illusion, glamour, and Maya. So one day we will all be the Blessed Ones in factual consciousness in the lower worlds, even as we are right now the Blessed Ones in fact on the higher planes. The trouble is that due to something that I call dimensional sealing, like S-E-A-L-I-N-G, where the lower aspects of man do not know what the higher aspects are doing, and we overcome that through the antikarana. Well, due to dimensional sealing, we're not aware of ourselves that are fully aware, who are fully aware on the higher planes, and we have to overcome that to become the blessed ones through and through on the lower levels of encapsulated consciousness as well as the higher levels. So this is our, at least when we're talking about consciousness, this is our great work, and somehow we will manage to do this. So when he's talking about the blessed ones here, it's full of apparent contradiction. It's and inconsistencies, and you wonder, how can these paradoxes be true? But if we know more about the science of the monad and its method of remaining where it is and yet projecting itself onto the lower planes, we'll know what he's talking about. Remember, the monad is in a way two. We can say there is the brother who remained at home in the Bible, and there's the brother who went forth and became the prodigal son, and they're both the same being in a way. And of course, the father is the planetary logos, who in a way contains them both. So all of us are on the lower planes and the higher planes simultaneously. It's just that on the higher planes we know that and we realize it, and on the lower planes we don't. So when he's talking about the blessed ones, he's talking about who we really are, but he's talking about who we will realize ourselves to be from the lower planes, the divine extension of the ageless, beginningless, endless monad. So let's just look at this, and then we'll come to that little sentence about the things that will disappear, and among them will be the great glamour of hatred. Naught holds the blessed ones, neither the deities nor form. Imagine the deities being a limitation, but of course, when you're dealing with the issue of what is essential reality, even any form, whether subtle or more concrete, is in a way an illusion. It's a representation of the absolutely infinite being, but it's not, it's a veil. It's still a veil. Neither the deities nor form, neither desire nor mind, nor any quality of life. So we're really going to transcend all these normal things when we are the liberated blessed ones, and via the antikarana, we have returned to our highest state, which seems relatively high now, but of course, on and on it goes on the way of high revolution. Pure life are they, the essence of the monad. That's us. That's who we are. Pure being and pure will, which is the first, in a way, externalization of being. Pure love and pure intent, which is focalized will. This is all that unenlightened man can grasp, and only that in part. Well, we better we better number ourselves among unenlightened man, when you consider that even our planetary logos is just a tiny speck in the cosmic vastness. So a little humility will go a long way. Humility, that adjusted sense of right proportion. Now come these paradoxes, and what Master Moria said is, see if you can contain paradoxes, not be driven crazy by paradoxes and apparent contradiction. That somehow they're two ends of the same stick, and you know how it goes with sticks. You got two ends, and if you bend them, the extremes meet in the middle. So let's see if we can do that with our consciousness. The blessed ones are not, and yet they are. Well, they're formless, and yet they appear, for the sake of the universal illusion in form. The blessed ones know naught, and yet know all. That's an interesting one, because their state of consciousness contains the synthesis of all that we isolate as discrete pieces of knowledge. The blessed ones love not, yet offer love divine. They don't, love the particular thing over another particular thing. They love the whole. And from them radiates that great cohesion under the law of cohesion that we call love divine. The blessed ones remember not, yet all is recollection. How we could ponder on that. In other places, we're supposed to let recollection go, and yet memory serves. So, they don't need to be particular here, and yet they contain all that has ever happened. The blessed ones remain in isolation pure, and yet at will can take a form. Well, this is a higher state, I suppose, of what we call isolated unity, which really begins at the fifth initiation, and we get some glimmer of it, as we're closing in on the third initiation, what this isolated unity may be. Now, that doesn't mean they're in any way separate. They're absolutely at one with all things, and they are all things. So the paradoxes mount up. The blessed ones dwell ever in the high and lofty place, what should we call it, the monadic plane, yet oft can walk on earth in light phenomenal through the projection of themselves via Kriya Shakti to create the Maya Virupa, and they appear to our limited senses in the phenomenal worlds of the lower 18 planes. And when you're thinking about phenomena, you might say in a way that anything lower than the monadic plane is phenomena, and in a way even the monadic plane itself, and in a way even the entire cosmic physical plane, all phenomena. But, their true home is the monadic plane, at least at this time, and yet they project themselves via the Maya Virupa into the lower 18 subplanes. The blessed ones manifest not through form, yet are all forms and all intents. So just imagine, that in a way we on our own high plane are pure being, and yet underlie and substand and somehow support all forms, which in essence we have become when making the transition from the world of being to the world of becoming without ever leaving the world of being. That's that kind of both and thing, You're in the world of becoming, and yet you have not left the world of being. They operate, it's the dual life of the monad. So anyway, if I was being honest with myself, my goodness, I'd say, okay, I have to ponder on each one of these a long time to extract from it what is truly meant, and to gain a realization, a true realization. It's an atmic ability, or at least we should get some kind of reflection from it or of it. Then the old commentary runs through what would constitute many pages of writing, shewing that the blessed ones are naught and yet are all there is. Well, that's the same as the absolute. It is naught, it's the zero, N-O-U-G-H-T, and yet is all there is. That they possess nothing, and yet are in themselves the expression of all reality. See, these are the mysteries of being, and Master DK told us in the beginning that he was an initiate into the mysteries of being, and that should tell us a little something about who he was, meaning that he was a master, but he never came out and said so. That they dwell nowhere, because non-locality is the rule in these higher worlds. It's all at the point, it's all taking place at one point. That they dwell nowhere and yet are found everywhere. Nowhere and everywhere are very interesting dichotomy, that they have faded out and yet are shining in full radiance and can be seen. They've faded out of normal perception, of course, but then their externalization can be seen. The externalization of being, that's what we all are. We're the light and being of the one infinite being in form. Negation after negation is piled up only promptly to be contradicted in an effort to shew, an old form of the word show, right? To shew how divorced from and yet inclusive of form is the life of the blessed ones. I want to say, the Tibetan, he knew Elizabethan English very, very well. Now, no modern speaker of English uses the word shew, S-H-E-W. We use the word show. But Alice Bailey, took down what he said. The story is sometimes she argued with him about the right use of language in a more modern context. But here, since it's from the old commentary, I guess she just took it down in the old form. So it ends with this wonderful conjunction. And remember, we are the pilgrim. We are the monad who has gone forth and yet has stayed at home. That's always the amazing thing. We're at home and we've gone forth at the same time. And somehow we have to, through alignment via the Antikarana, we have to realize that that is the case. We are the prodigal son, and yet we abide in the Father's home simultaneously. So here's this wonderful injunction that he gives us. Therefore, be full of joy, O pilgrim on the way towards enlightened being. And that's us, right? I mean, that's who we are. Pilgrims on the way towards enlightened being. For gain and loss are one. Darkness and light eternally reveal the true. Love and desire eternally invoke the life. Sounds like you can't lose, right? Naught disappears but pain. Nothing remains but bliss. The bliss of knowledge true, of contact real, of light divine, the way to God. Well, glamour, illusion, and Maya cause us plenty of pain. But we are pretty much the generators of that pain through our ignorance and through our refusal to obey the good law which was given to us by our solar kings back in the early days. If we had just followed the way they indicated, we might have found our way through this with less distress. Naught disappears but pain. Nothing remains but bliss. The bliss of knowledge true, of contact real, of light divine, the way to God. Oh, it's so beautiful. Now he goes on and explains a little bit. Such is the true goal, as yet unrealizable by us. What is it that we are endeavoring to do? And this, he gives you the whole path in just a paragraph. We are treading the way of release. Now think about the fourth initiation when you think about what he's saying here. We are treading the way of release, and on that way all drops from our hands. Everything is taken away, and detachment from the world of phenomenal life and of individuality is inevitably forced upon us. Okay, no choice here. Eventually we will become the group, we will become the one, and our individuality will be sacrificed in the realization of the one, and the lower 18 subplanes from which the Buddha wanted to liberate us via liberating us from the desire for those subplanes, they will fade away in interest. We are treading the way of loneliness and must learn eventually that we are essentially neither ego nor non-ego. Very interesting. He says, we're both the point and the whole simultaneously. He talks about that elsewhere. Complete detachment and discrimination must finally lead us, note this, is it terrifying? To a condition of such complete aloneness that the horror of the great blackness will settle down upon us. But when that pall of blackness is lifted and the light again pours in, the disciple sees that all that was grasped, treasured, and then lost and removed has been restored, but with this difference, that it no longer holds the life imprisoned by desire. Magnificent statement. We are treading the way that leads to the mountaintop of isolation, and we'll find it full of terror. Now look, this is a master of the wisdom speaking, maybe someone who's almost a Chohan. So he's been through this, okay? And he doesn't, and you know, Master DK, he's more given to understatement than he is to exaggeration. So when he uses words like horror and terror, you know, he's speaking of his own experience. We are treading the way that leads to the mountaintop of isolation, and will find it full of terror. Upon that mountaintop we must fight the final battle with the dweller on the threshold, only to find that that too is an illusion. That high point of isolation and the battle itself are only illusions and figments of unreality. So much for what we normally go through and think of our usual struggles as disciples. They're all part of the great illusion, but we don't realize it until we penetrate it through. They are the last stronghold of the ancient glamour and of the great heresy of separateness. And we've given a lot of attention to that. We actually began our work together looking at the great heresy of separateness, to which we will always return, because it is the root cause of everything that we find inimical to the clarification of consciousness. Now the transition. Then we, the beatific ones, and remember the Beatitudes on the Atmic plane, if you do those things, blessed are those, you know, as the Christ gave us, we become beatific, blessed, that is, then we, the beatific ones, will eventually find ourselves merged with all that is in love and understanding. And you can imagine this is the consciousness of the Christ. What was it, John 17, something like that? Was it 17, I think, where the great statement regarding identification is pronounced by the Christ. Then we, the beatific ones, will eventually find ourselves merged with all that is in love and understanding. Glamour can't survive in a state like that. Neither can illusion. Neither can that senseless, mindless action we call Maya. The isolation, a necessary stage, is itself but an illusion. We are treading the way of purification, and step by step all that we cherish is removed. Lust for form life, desire for love, and here it is, the great glamour of hatred, which somehow keeps us in that separative condition and allows us to repulse the very things that are part of ourselves. Somehow it's based upon division and the fragmentation of illusion. You know, you can't hate the one and be the one because there's nothing to hate. But if we divide up the world of perception into this and that, we can desire some things and repulse and hate other things. So we have to overcome this tremendous illusion of fragmentation. So we are treading the way of purification. All that we cherish is removed. Lust for form life, the desire for love, and the great glamour of hatred. These disappear, and we stand purified and empty. Now, this reminds us something of the Buddhist use of the word void, the void. The distress of emptiness is the immediate result. It grips us, and listen to this, and we feel that the price of holiness is too high. But, standing on the way, suddenly the whole being is flooded with light and love, and the emptiness is seen as constituting that through which the light and love may flow, through which light and love may flow to a needy world. In other words, we've gotten out of our own way, and all the clutter of illusion, glamour, and Maya are obviated. They are cast aside. They disappear, and through this void, through this vacuum, floods the light and love to a needy world. The purified one can dwell then in the place where dwell the blessed lords. We're talking about the very highest planes of the cosmic physical plane, and from that place go forth to illumine the world of men and of the deities. So in Buddhism, it's sometimes said that there are even certain gods who are not yet liberated in the ultimate sense. So, and there's just a little bit more maybe to, oh, wow, I may have, yeah, right, okay. There are 4 ways which stretch before the disciples of the Lord of the world. That's all of us, hopefully. They must all be trodden before the inner being is released, our true monadship, you might say, and the liberated Son of God can enter at will what are symbolically called the 4 gates into the city of Shambhala, okay? The city of the Most High, which is ever swept by the life of those who have achieved liberation through loneliness, detachment, isolated unity, and purification. These are 4 great factors which, distressing as they may be, lead us into the liberated life. A realization of the goal and the way to that goal is of service at this time. Thus he gives it to us, and it is to this realization that the teachers of humanity seek to stimulate the sons of God. Okay, all right. I think that takes us to where we need to be. Now, I always love this particular paragraph. Well, maybe it's a bit more than one paragraph because it encapsulates our whole journey and all the fears we may have along the way as our form life recoils from the beauty of liberation. So, I read it from time to time just to give myself the courage and stimulation that may be needed, and I think it's of value to read it to the group. And of course, hatred is based on fragmentation and the illusion of fragmentation. If the whole is seen as one, and if all things are seen to be of the same essence with no difference, we're on our way to isolated unity, and the great glamour of hatred can never seize us. Of course, we may experience that now and then, but, drop away from it back into the illusion of fragmentation and all the emotion that gets attached to various types of fragments. I love it, I hate it, and all that kind of thing. But eventually we will work our way free of fragmentation, and we will realize, as the Tibetan says, the macrocosmic whole is all there is. Let the group perceive that whole and then no longer use the thought, my soul and thine. Well, okay, maybe I might have gone a little, might have gotten more involved in this paragraph than I anticipated. But let's just say that this is I'm going to call this the end of Doggy, forgive me, Doggy number 45. And today is the 25th of August. And we'll start here next time, and we'll read the next few paragraphs. There's not much left here. Let's see, Finland, United States. My the replacement for my, let's see if I can get this. It's English, and it should be British English, if anybody can see where that is. Maybe United Kingdom. That's it right there. Okay, set as default. Yes, yes. Okay, so 25 August 17, and then we'll start next time, which will be, let's see when that will be, huh? It'll be the 1st. It'll be the 1st of September. And we'll continue, and we'll say this is the beginning, and I don't know what has happened here. Something has happened, but I'll just spell out the word. beginning of doggy number 46. I should be able to have that, and that'll be on 1 September 17. So basically, I guess what I'm asking you is that you determine for yourself what might be of interest to you in the paragraph that we have just read, realizing that when there is a state of oneness, of course we can talk about oneness till we're blue, you know, maybe it helps if we're blue in the blue logos, okay, but when oneness actually begins to make its impression as a reality upon us, then all these things that we're trying to get rid of because they hold us in bondage, as the Buddha would say, through desire, illusion, glamour, and Maya, they fade away in the oneness which the blessed ones perceive. So we have to build the antikarana through the personality of the triad, which personality of the monad, which we call the spiritual triad, until glimmers of this oneness leading to isolated unity become a reality for us, and then something happens to our heart center, something happens to our heart within the head, something happens with the unfoldment of the fullness of the egoic lotus, and once that's no longer an encumbrance, and how can we imagine what that would mean, we live in the triad on our way to living in the center of pure being, and all things disappear that prevent us from realizing the true nature of what we are. Okay, friends, so I never know, you know, I thought, okay, we'll read the other things, but this is a mouthful and it's quite enough. So if there are any thoughts along the way that have to do with this glorious section of paragraphs, and you know, I don't know some of you are familiar with it. You know, in the old days, when we were teaching in the University of the Seven Rays, the Esoteric Psychology course, Esoteric Psychology was Volume 2, especially, was our main textbook, let's say, and we always spent a lot of time and attention on this particular section because it so beautifully encapsulated the goal of freedom under the Syrian law, you might say, the law of freedom, which we are all attempting to understand and thus to liberate ourselves from illusion, glamour, and Maya. Okay, so I'll turn it over to you. If you have thoughts about these things, maybe I could make these things smaller. There's quite a bit here, I realize. How small can I make it and we can still see it? Let's try number 10. And then hopefully we'll get the idea. All right. Any thoughts, any comments on this magnificent section from the old commentary and DK's words afterward describing our path that leads through, and what did I outline down there? Loneliness, apparent, detachment, real and yet not real, isolated unity, which is not isolated, and a most necessary clearing of purification. You know, you could look at the different planets that are involved there. Loneliness has a lot of Saturn, detachment a lot of Mercury, isolated unity is in a way the quality of the sun, and purification, well, there's a huge Pluto involved in that. Probably you could get all the different planets involved in various ways. But every life offers us an opportunity to deal, not all at once, of course, but to deal with different aspects of these necessities, leading us to true liberation on the fixed cross, where Aquarius liberates us. You know, we have blinding light, fiery pain, bitter woe, and then finally in Aquarius we have liberation, and then on to a liberation we can hardly conceive as we rise ever higher into greater and greater beings and identify as those beings. All right. Your thoughts, your questions, anything of this nature? Yes.
We have a question from Yvonne.
These are located, Yvonne, in Esoteric Psychology Vol II, page 34 and 35. And some people say, well, DK has only given us the psychology of the soul, and that is not true. He actually, while not really announcing it, has given us the psychology of the monad as well as the psychology of the soul. And the new type of psychology, of course, it may yet be a way off, is the psychology of what we are as the incarnating spirit, the monad. So Esoteric Psychology Volume 2. Now, if you haven't read that book, anybody of us that maybe hasn't read it, it's the practical book, along with White Magic, for the kind of things that people like you and I go through as we try to make our discipleship effective and real. So I strongly recommend it, and maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll just have to, I don't know, give a course in esoteric psychology over the internet. Seems like the days of traveling to Australia and New Zealand, may be over, but we can reach out, and maybe all this would be a benefit to you. So that's how I see it, Ivan. Go to Esoteric Psychology Volume 2, those pages. Wonderful book, wonderful book. Okay, other thoughts, other questions, other comments? You do see the relationship, don't you, between hatred and fragmentation? It's the law of attraction and repulsion outside of the context of the law of synthesis. The law of synthesis restores our understanding that all things are one. But if we simply do the human version of the law of attraction and repulsion, we're going to attract some things, repel other things. It's all necessary, of course. We have to do that, but we must never forget that it's all an aspect of the one self, and we are it. So eventually, all of these miasmas have to lift, and we come to our true identity, which lies under all difference. The Buddhists say, at least I think they do, you look in all directions and you see only the same thing. Now, how is that possible? How do the masters manage? They look everywhere, and they can handle diversity beautifully, but they realize that diversity is homogeneity. I'll repeat that. The diversity really, essentially, is homogeneity. So you have to live in both worlds, handling diversity and realizing its homogeneous nature. Are there other thoughts or questions that you would like to, Karen Gritska? Okay, hold on, Karen. There you go. You can speak now. Oops. You're unmuted, I think. Everything should be okay, I think. No? You're good. You should be able to speak. Brett, do you hear Karen?
No.
No. Something is not quite right there. Oops, Karen, just make sure that the volume on your computer is not on mute for some reason. And if not, then just write a little note about what you wanted to say. Okay, something's not quite kosher here. But okay, as soon as you can get back to us, that'll be fine. Okay.
Michael?
Yes.
We have a couple of written questions from Isabel and John.
Okay, I've got John's up right here. Okay, and there's Isabel. I see Isabel's right above. Okay. Okay, well, wait a second. Let's see. These are written questions. So, explaining to me the difference between loneliness and solitude, the latter being a necessity to realize self. As Sajoli told me, se sarai sola sarai tuta tus, which boils down to becoming self essentially. And you were 19 then. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. That you got it straight from the initiate's thought, as it were. So, okay, well, solitude, look at the word soul, S-O-L, it means sun. And a matter of fact, when you go to identify our solar logos, we sometimes call him or it Helios. Sometimes we call that great being Soul. So when we finally manage to enter deeply into our own essential being, the monad itself is like a sun, and it dwells in solitude. It dwells detached from all of its becomings. It has gone forth into multiplicity. The one has become the many, and yet the monad does not essentially identify with any of the multiplicity it has become. And so it is with every greater monad, the planetary logos, solar logos, etc. That's their quality. They radiate forth and become an entire field of relationships, and yet remain in solitude, in solitude. Loneliness is oftentimes the emotional reaction to the first stages of realization that one is in a kind of state which will detach oneself from all that one has held dear. But I think it is overcome in time, and that there is no true loneliness. There's only, what do they call it? All oneness, aloneness, all oneness. So that's what the loneliness leads to. If you want to be alone, then what does it mean? Be totally yourself or something like that. So that's it. The more we achieve identification as our true identity, which is the spirit, we are detached from all the things we have become. Look, in a funny kind of way, and it sounds outrageous, but we have become the entire universe, and everything that you see before us is the externalization of the one itself, externalized being, externalized from the absolute. And so you really can't differentiate between what you are and everything you see, ultimately. Now, on the way there, on the way to realizing that this is the case, we have to use discrimination sharply, and we have to discriminate apparent self from apparent not self. This is necessary. But there comes a time of synthesis when we put it all back together and become the very thing we thought we were not, even the not so nice things. If I'm not God and the devil both, I'm not the whole. So, there are all these distortions, but underneath it all, I am the only thing that is. I am that I am, or I am that and that I am. It's a big Leo realization about solitude. So it's nice that you were able to meet us at Jolie and hear directly from him. Okay, now let's see. So John, you've got a few things here to say, and Karen is there too. So John, such as loving the essence of all that exists in all its parts, yet feeding the fragmented ideas. Thus we may avoid feeding the glamour illusion that is manifesting through the part in the whole. Yes, so what do we feed in another person? DK tells us all the things that we must avoid stimulating, and of course, what he does isolate out of all of this is that we feed the soul in every nature. And eventually, if we can manage it, we feed the sense of the one, which is to feed the spirit. So the loving essence, yes. So, but first of all, we have to penetrate through spiritual discernment. What is that loving essence? Can we get to it? Can we see through all the veils that seem to obscure it? And when we use the word ideas, we have to be specific. Ideas can be, we use it like the word thoughts, but an idea is a true being found on the Buddhic plane and beyond. And in a way, every projected extension of the monad is an idea. And what that really means is that we ourselves are ideas. And every one of us, as an idea, has one little aspect of the divine will to carry forward. So if we can feed the idea, which each one of us really is, we're feeding the divine will in every fragment of the one being. So if we're very careful about how we use the word ideas, we can come to a thought like that. So manifesting the parts in the whole, that is the divine essence, that is the etheric, astral, and mental, yet not feeding the fragmented ideas. Okay, yeah, okay, well, your fragmented ideas or fragmented thoughts. In other words, let me just generalize by saying, not feeding the fragmentation. Okay, not feeding the fragmentation. Now, fragmentation is what we normally perceive. Everything looks different from everything else, and we emphasize these differences. Now, on our way to clarification, the emphasis of differences can be very important, but then comes the synthetic operation under the law of synthesis of finding the essence and putting it all back together. And like I said, various heart centers are needed if we're going to be able to do that. And the monad itself is a great 12-petaled lotus and a kind of heart center. You know, it's found on the second plane where the etheric heart of the planetary logos and even the solar logos are found. Okay, so, you know, we would actually need a face-to-face conversation to go into many of these things, I think. Okay, anyway, now, Karen, Beatific One on page 35. Please clarify the relationship of Beatific Ones to the Beatitudes and the Atmic Plane. What is the relationship? I don't know if I can do that, but I can say that if we follow what the Christ said, blessed are those, you know, blessed are the meek, the trained people, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who mourn, you know, and so forth. If we gain that atmic attitude of the Beatitudes, we shall become blessed in our nature, because we will rise onto the plane of will and into the plane of the monad and will become the beatific one. So basically, it's to realize that what the Christ said about who is blessed. Sometime we'll have to look at all those Beatitudes and see what they can mean occultly, the way DK suggested we do in this very book. But if we can understand what the Christ said about who is blessed and what kind of attitude the Blessed One really has, and if we can apply that to our lives and have that be our normal state of consciousness, then we become the beatific one. We become the Blessed One. So I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to go into all of it right now. I'm thinking that if we develop the mind that is in Christ, when he talks about the Beatitudes and who is blessed, then we ourselves, because of that attitude, because of that consciousness, will become the Blessed One. So, you know, of course, I'm tempted right now to go through the many, many translations of the Beatitudes, but suffice it to say, it's an atmic attitude, which puts us directly in line with the spiritual will of the atmic plane coming from the divine will of the monad. And we will become truly representatives of the divine will of the monad when we fulfill the Beatitudes and understand them, and we will therefore become blessed ones by that kind of realization. Now, we could go into it step by step, each one of those different Beatitudes, and some of them are, you know, a little bit strange. From the perspective of our normal phenomenal life, it seems to turn everything upside down. And there's so many of them that are based on relinquishment and renunciation. And that's the true way to understand the divine will and to become the divine will. Okay, yeah. Right, okay, and here is a corrected error. Here's Sarai 222. If you are alone, you will wholly be your own. Okay, that's good. Your own being the all. Okay, well, he knew what he was talking about, no question about that. So, you know, he was an initiate, a true initiate disciple. You have to say, when you look at all those disciples that DK was training, Alice Bailey and Roberto Assagioli were somehow, seems to me, initiates of the third degree and on their way to the fourth degree. So we see the kind of standard that's being set there, you know, as various people claim this and they claim that. Well, you know, do you measure up to Alice Bailey? Do you measure up to Roberto Assagioli? We have to be honest with ourselves. We're all on our way, of course. So thanks for that correction, Sarai Tutatua. I used to study Italian, but only to sing, you know. So anyway, He was a very great teacher. All right. Loneliness is the gap in brain consciousness recognition of the soul world. I think that's a good definition, Rose. I think that's a good definition. And if we can somehow penetrate and so stimulate the brain cells so they truly can realize the unitive perspective of the soul, then in fact we feel that kind of connectivity which negates loneliness. So, the brain, in one way, as it presently is cultivated, is a great barrier. From another perspective, it will be a great point of revelation once we know really how to handle these things. Okay, thank you. And here is Isabel again to corroborate your words, Michael. Homine sunt voluntatis, as regards we being ideas. Okay, so gosh, I can't translate. I don't know Latin really. Can you? We are all will, or something like that. Can you write in here, Isabel, the translation of that? And then
a little further.
Is it a little
In
further
that,
down? Oh, wait a second. Such as loving the essence of all that exists in all its parts. Men are will. Men are will. Yeah. Okay. That's right. Okay, such as loving the essence of all that exists in all its parts, yet fitting for. Okay, and this one comes from before, from John. So, okay, we are ideas, and ideas are partial relationships of that which exists in the fullness of the algorithm with which a particular universal logos is bestowed. So, every universal logos that comes forth has, in a way, the tiniest part of absolute infinity, which it has to self-objectify. And so itself, the universal logos, is an idea on a very vast nature as far as we're concerned, on a very fragmented nature as far as absolute infinitude is concerned, and the absolute deity. So, there's a huge gap between the absolute deity and that which the universal logos comprises. The universal logos being, like infinitely smaller, you might say. But then with every projection from that one universal idea, that which goes forth, when the universal logos divides itself into all these emanated parts, every emanated part is an idea, an aspect of the wholeness which it is and which it has to realize in self-objectification through a universe. Okay, so some of that stuff that I'm talking about here is in my book about infinity, and I'm working on a book of seed thoughts where I'm going to try to bring these things out with a degree of clarity. Suffice it to say, although we seem limited and are limited in the phenomenal worlds and must work through our limitations seriously, in essence, we are not limited. We are both and. We are the absolute opposite of limitation, and yet we are, for purposes of this drama, this dance, this play, whatever you want to call this universe, for those purposes, we occupy a limited, fragmented ring pass knot, which must be restored to wholeness. So when we build the Antikarana, when we overcome glamour, illusion, and Maya, we're on our way back to the wholeness which we essentially are. And then when the universe explodes, the egg cracks, and then we are restored to absoluteness. But that's another matter. And meanwhile, he says, therefore be full of joy, O pilgrim on the way. Well, I've thought about that. Can I do that in my life? Well, maybe not usually. I'd like to be able to do it. But it's sound advice, because the future, the ever-repeating future, is so glorious, and our temporary encapsulation will be overcome by following the correct rules, and inevitably overcome even if we don't follow the rules, because we will all be lifted. Okay.
Michael?
Yes, Brett.
Tuija has her hand up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Tuija, go ahead.
Thank you, Fred. So again, thinking about these words, loneliness and solitude. And because I'm not English-speaking person, sometimes I have some kind of reflections of the words. And for me, this solitude is always something very noble. And it made me thinking about the freedom. I think that the yearning of freedom is the key thing in within all the units, and being free from out of everything which binds us. And then I was thinking about this doctrine of negation, also the fourth initiation, the renunciation, that there is something when we think about solitude that we naturally start to negate, because because we are only one. So when we go out from the many, from all that which is binding us, it's the one which is freedom that can be. So I think there is this some kind of natural development within us because of this freedom factor within us, that we, no matter what will happen, we will, the monad itself, the divinity within us is demanding that freedom. And then this solitude is like in that noble state, the fullness of standing alone within all.
Thank you, Tuija. Put yourself on mute there, dear. Okay, that's good. Well, that's it. Our joy, our bliss is in the monad. Our joy is in the soul. As he tells us, our happiness is in certain personality states which are achieved. And that's why that marvelous section, has the words, "Nothing remains but bliss," because it's obviously a discussion of the progress of the monad through its emanations and incarnations to a state in which it realizes what it is fully, through and through all the different levels of the cosmic physical plane to be redeemed. The monad, via its extensions, is on a great redemptive mission. And at some point in that mission, it's not just the prodigal son. The prodigal son does achieve bliss through and through eventually. And that's all of us, of course. Okay, thank you, Tuija, for those thoughts. There is, this whole question of nobility. It goes along with the sun. It goes along with Leo. It goes along with our true selfhood. It goes along with AU, which is the, it's very interesting. AU is the symbol for gold in chemistry. And when you're looking at the descent of sounds in the Treatise on Cosmic Fire, it goes A, AU for the second plane, which is the monadic plane, and then AUM for the atmic plane, and down it goes. It's a very fascinating section about how the word enters into phenomenal life and becomes all diversity. So AU is the symbol of the self, the golden noble, beautiful, solar, Leonian self, which we are all eventually, trying to achieve. All right. Well, maybe it's time to anything else there, Brett? Yes.
Yes, we have a written comment from Isabel and a comment from Leslie.
Okay. Let's take a look here. Yes. Okay. Freedom is okay. That's beautiful. And Isabel is saying here to you, freedom is the revelation of solitude. I think it's a good, without the mourning of loneliness, mourning, in true solitude, there's no mourning in the sad sense. So, every time we have Leo, and we've had this incredible eclipse lately, we do have the opportunity to get deeper and deeper into our true monadic nature. And when retrograde Mercury goes direct soon, says Leslie, it will be 1 degree away from 29 Leo, where Regulus sits. It will then traverse towards Regulus. Yes, and Regulus, the law of the noble heart and the law of the self. So, DK said, look at some of the more prominent stars, Alcyone, Sirius, Regulus, a number of them, where they show up in the chart. And they will be useful and revelatory in the life of discipleship. And so, and your choice of word here, Leslie, very good, regality. I like it. Reality and regality. There's a great way of thinking about it. Excellent. That's a good one. That's a good one. Through the achievement of regality, or the achievement of reality, we achieve regality, or whichever way you want to look at it. I like it. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Are we good then, Brett? I think
so.
Okay, good.
Oh, one more.
Okay,
Leslie.
Okay. Okay. Let's see where I am here. If I can make it appear. Okay, let's try it. Yeah. Thanks. By the way, folks, I was born in 1957 and had Pluto at 29 of Leo, and so does Tuija. I think all of you people who've had that eclipse on your Pluto, people better watch out for you, Or it's a great it's a great opportunity. Yeah, exactly. It's a great opportunity to destroy illusion. And it depends on what house you find it in. But anyway, Pluto is the destroyer of illusion. So let's hope it works for everybody who has that particular conjunction. All right. Well, anyway, I'm going to go on now. All right. Well, these discussions, I realize that I'm expanding on the subject. Obviously, this is not a straight glamour discussion. It involves many things in occultism and many things in esotericism, but it's all a question for us of clarifying our consciousness so that we can see reality and be reality. I often say that being is better than seeing. Seeing is on the way to being, but it still involves the subject-object dualism. Then there's the unification of the seer and the seen, and that we call that kind of unity. And then there's identification, and that's where the seer and the seen are only one thing. And we're on our way to that. And so many of DK students were pushing towards the second initiation. And let's just say that following that initiation, Sanat Kumara begins to mean something, identification begins to mean something, and this movement toward oneness begins to mean something real. So I trust we will all persist. We've got 8 years left here before the great conclave, and we have to apply ourselves as never before, both in learning and in demonstrating the effectiveness of that learning in our service. The kind of pressure you put on yourself, okay, it's up to you what you decide to do. But this is the time when that old saying that pressure is the law of existence should come in handy, because we're going through a forcing process. Anybody who is on the path of initiation, starting from that entrance into the kingdom of God at the first initiation, anybody who's on that is applying an internal soul spirit pressure to himself or herself, and we have to have a certain willingness to do that. And let's just say that these final 8 years, well, it's just the beginning of something new, of course, but these final 8 years will, in a way, separate the sheep from the goats. And although I'm a sheep, being an Aries type, I'd rather be a goat at this moment. And so I wish goathood upon all of us, And may we push forward, getting more out of ourselves than we ever thought possible for the greater good, for the greater good. All right, here we go. So it's the great glamour of hatred. We're working on that. And all of that kind of thing that's sweeping the world at the moment, based on the lack of realization that we are a unity and we're all one being. It's all based on that. So we have to find a way to help weaken that glamour. So okay, there are some 47 of us here, something like that. And we'll kind of tune in with each other wherever we may be. In the silence, a few moments of silence. We try to realize our unity together in this type of service which we are undertaking. So we're fusing our consciousness together as if we are one being and one consciousness and one instrument working on behalf of humanity and following the instructions of hierarchy. And we're going to use our protective formula. You know, it's a long-armed cross here, involving the forehead, the center of the chest, and the eyes. And we're going to make what's called here, he calls it the cross of divinity, and we realize the necessity to remain untouched by the glamour with which we intend to work. This protection is a necessity, or he wouldn't give it to us. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. And we visualize that radiating protective cross shining for each one of us, and in a way shining within the group. And this will make us real light workers, as it is said. And then in our preparatory stage, we're going to unite the different lights. So we imagine the plane of mind, however we want to imagine it. It's not so much the head, it's the plane of mind. And we draw up the vitality, the light of matter, onto the visualized mental plane, and there also the light of mind, the light of the lower mind, is found, through which we analyze and correlate and reason and find different ways towards truth. So we visualize the union of the reinforcing light of matter combining with the light of the mind, what we normally call the intellect. And these two lights we focus on the plane of mind. Using our creative imagination to do so. And then holding that awareness, that image, we meditate on soul contact. And in this, we seek to recognize the light of the soul. Which is real, substantial light of the higher mental plane. With the Buddhic plane and the Atmic plane being represented within it. Now we'll bring these two different lights together, the unified light of matter and lower mind, and then the light of the soul. We'll use the creative imagination to bring these three lights together on the plane of mind. We try to get the feel of the union of these three lights as one. And once that image is clear to us, that feeling of the union is clear to us, we're going to say together, as we see before us, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. The light of day is the light of Scorpio, it's the light of the Buddhic plane, it's the light where the human monad finds its major expression, the Buddhic plane. So the intuition will be revealed through the agency of the triple light. The intuition will dispel illusion, and the clarified, fortified triple light will dissipate glamour. And then we'll enter into the formula. And as we do this, we're going to, as it were, turn on a great searchlight made of all the 3-as-1 lights of the group members. We're going to turn this searchlight imaginatively onto the astral plane, not in the astral body of any one of us, but out onto the astral plane where so many of these forces are driving human beings up and down the land and into confusion and distortion. So we'll turn on our searchlight imaginatively. It's a great source of revelation, and it's also a great weapon. It's almost like the horn of the unicorn. Radiance are we, and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. The inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. The world of meaning is the world of the soul. So we are bridges, we are bridges. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. So our beam, powerful, illuminative, destructive, extends onto the astral plane, which we visualize amidst all the fogs and swirls of obscuring glamour. And we're going to fortify our beam of light with the spiritual will. We can imagine from the monad to the atmic plane, to the jewel in the lotus, to the synthesis petals, and into the sacrifice petals of will, and the petal of will found in the second and very first knowledge tier of petals, the spiritual will. Which is our willingness to do what the plan requires. And we say, as we fortify our beam with spiritual will, we say, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. The goal, as we know, is the dissipation of the glamour of hatred. If you've seen pictures and videos of the alt-right rallies that have been occurring in the United States, complete with the Nazis and Ku Klux Klan and all the rest, you've seen those who are responding to the energy of hatred, and they feel they're doing the right thing. Now it's the energy currents that are animating them and motivating them and others in the world who respond similarly. It's those currents, largely from the astral plane, that we have to weaken and dissipate. And so, We use these words of power in order to do that, and as we do it, we see our beam penetrating this glamour of hatred and producing its weakening and dissipation. This you'll do, however you want to do it, according to your best understanding. So we're all, in a way, invested in our beam of light, our beam of will-fortified triple light, and we wield our unicorn-like weapon upon the astral plane as we say the words of power, visualizing what must be done. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of hatred. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life or vitality behind the glamour of hatred. And in the silence for 5 minutes, watching the weakening, the dissipation of this glamour, we maintain intensity of purpose as we see the work proceeding. So 5 minutes of silence as in our own way, and yet as a group, we see this work to dissipate the great glamour of hatred. We see it effectively proceeding. And we're doing our little part through the power of our creative imagination and the various alignments to contribute to the dissipation, the melting away, the disappearance of this useless glamour which prevents so much of the divine plan from affecting human beings in a constructive manner. And the great sun of light, the sun of love, the sun of spiritual will shines upon a humanity dwelling now in the light and not obscured by the darkness, the fogs, the mists, the miasmas of the negative energies of the astral plane. And so then we, together as an act of will, withdraw our beam imaginatively. We refocus upon the plane of mind, which is carrying our spiritual will. We will apply it again, working on our individual glamours, of course, however often we do that, and then as a group anyway, in another week. And we turn off this searchlight for now. And to conclude our work together, with confidence that we have done at least a little something, we will sound the Om 3 times on a second ray note. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming together to do this piece of service. And Tuija and I are continuing with our Ask program. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock, the Soul of Nations meditation. And then Sunday at 8 o'clock, well, that's our time. It's 5 p.m. GMT, both at 5 p.m. GMT. This is our late week. We'll do the attracting of money for hierarchical purposes. So hope you can join us, and just use your Ask Comprehensive link, which all of you should have. Almost any link we've sent out will do. You should be able to receive the broadcast. We had a little trouble last night. DreamHost was down, and there's quite a story there. But anyway, everything is restored now, so we hope you are able to join us and keep your protective formula going, and be watchful always for what may be these wisps of glamour, of distortion, exaggeration, minimization, not seeing things clearly as they are. So thank you very much, and many blessings from Olivia, Tuija, and myself. And we'll continue this, as long as we can, and as frequently as we can, and we'll let you know if there have to be any breaks in the process. Occasionally it is so when we're traveling and so forth, but all the best to everybody. Lots of love, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.